Hey guys, so today we'll be taking a little look on how to make a build and going on some basics and how you can begin on creating a character. I'm gonna showcase a few classes, but not all of them, just to give you a general idea on how to start building your own character. So we're starting off with necromancer, and the best way to start is you pick your class, whichever class you would like to play, and you take that and you test all the weapons available. You go here, build, and you test all of these, see whatever you like, right? And what you do is, let's say you like using scepter, so you look at the scepter skills and you determine, okay, so what is the most prevalent type of damage? Is it condition or is it brute force? So for scepter, it's bleeding on basic attacks and bleeding on second skill and torment on third skill. So this is condi heavy, so you know that your focus with this weapon is conditions, and so you would want to build around that. Now, for me, for example, I have picked axe and focus and greatsword. So for me, it was axe, focus, which goes into this spiteful talisman, tells me get cooldown and a damage increase on both axe and focus skills, and so spite was an obvious choice to go into that availability. Now I am also a Reaper as an elite spec because I did decide to go power due to how my how my weapon set is focused, so I did decide to go power Reaper to be more effective on that, and for that I did, and that's how I accessed the greatsword here. From that, I have so the Reaper would most likely, your elite spec will go into your utilities. So you take based on your utilities is how you build your elite spec. Sometimes, for example, classes like Berserker, Warrior, you do not need to go into your utilities regarding traits on the Berserker line, but you can pick something else more focused on Berserker mode, for example. Especially if you use it as a banner slave, you wouldn't want to use it to use a lot of utilities because you always have banners, and so going for Berserker mode is more effective. But for my build on this Necromancer here, we're going for a lot of Reaper. So Reaper upkeep and Reaper mode, and so obviously Soul Reaping, which is focused on that entire combat form, is very effective and kind of somewhat mandatory. And you have all these insane Grandmaster tier trade lines in this line, which really enables the build. I personally picked the increased critical strike in Reaper Shroud, just because that means I can go less crit rate outside of it and then still do the damage when I'm inside. Then Soul Bobs, which is again just overall increases damage. It's just a damage buff, nothing too fancy. And then here you have a few choices. So this here is for staff if you want to play staff. Some people do like to use Soul Reaping with their Scourge. I'm not a big fan of it, but I do see it as a possibility. Then you also have stuff like Shroud Skill 1 inflicts vulnerability, which can be very good, very powerful with Decimate defenses. Striking a foe with vulnerability increases your critical hit chance by 2%. Now this is actually way more powerful than you would think, because spamming 1 adds 2 vulnerability stacks, which means you get 4% increased crit rate after every strike. Each enemy can have 25 vulnerability stacks, which allows this single trait to proc 50 increased percent crit strike, and then with this that's 33, that's 83% chance. Now my character's base is already 31, so I already overcap if the enemy has maxed out on the vulnerability, and that works nicely into abilities like Rending Claws with the axe. Just slowly apply that vulnerability from a threshold. Greatsword, you have Death Spiral, which immensely increases your vulnerability count, and so all this works to synergize, like the trade line synergizes the weapons, and the weapons are all built around the same concept of critting when I'm in my Reaper Shroud, literally reaping the souls. Now for the gear it's a little bit, you know, because there's so many stats nowadays, it can be a little bit difficult to decide, well, what am I going for? And for that, the most important feature or key part is like, what are you going to use that character for? If it's just going to be a character that you use for fun to do some meta events and you won't even bring it to fractals or raiding, then at that point you can just decide, well, do you want to stay alive while you explore? Then you might want to go for something more you know, tanky. So specifically for necromancers, I have this here, Rune of the Spellbreaker, with some healing power and toughness. And the reason I have toughness is because I don't need precision due to all the critical increased trait points that I have in the build. So I don't need this to actually be any higher. So I have toughness to make myself a little bit tankier and maintain myself, healing power to allow me to switch between greatsword and dagger, because dagger, or axe and dagger, because main hand dagger, now where is it? It's right here, life siphoning, allows you to steal health from your enemies, and is just overall a really good tool to kind of get through some tough enemies if you're struggling with something, maybe a story mode or whatever, a little champion or maybe a veteran or whatever it could be. So this all works really nicely. Obviously healing power just increases your base healing with your healing ability, as well as, in my case, since I'm using Augury of Death, my shouts, and since I use 5 shouts, all heal me when they attack something, and that also increases the life siphon heal. And it might not look like a lot, but it does add up, especially considering that if I hit multiple targets, the recharge is reduced, so I get to spam it a lot more, and I do get that healing per target hit. So it is pretty nice, and it synergizes pretty well overall. Now I'm currently in the Amethyst Bastion Sanctuary, so these golems is inside of that sanctuary, just so you are aware. This is still technically in PvE, even though this sanctuary is located in World vs. World. Now, we are fighting some tower guards. These are classic veterans, and now this is a champion, this is a tower lord. So this is, if you've ever done World vs. World, you know that this is the last target you kill before going in. And you just make sure this stays up all the time. Now I use Reaper's Touch because it does add a few stacks of regen to yourself, which is really nice. Then because it's PvE, you have Chill to the Bone, which just helps a lot. Now as you can see, I am critting a lot more than you would assume. I do have only 64%, but due to the basic vulnerability on the target, I'm critting a lot more. As long as it has 25 stacks, I'm actually over capped on crit due to the synergy of the build focusing on critical strikes. And it's really important that you focus on a few concepts instead of going jack of all trades. And as you can see, I don't crit anywhere near as much outside of my shroud because I do lose the 33%. And that was that tower. Now these does obviously not attack, but I do assure you that your self-sustain is actually pretty impressive. Even with just a mere 408 healing power, you can actually feel multiple, like a really good sustain on this. So this was just one example of how you can make a build. So just to go through the basics, you focus on your weapons. Which weapons do you like? Because they determine your play style. Then you find the trait lines that enhances them, because they will further reinforce your play style. And you don't. And the thing is, the game is heavily like there's definitely a way to make a lot of different builds. So you creativity will definitely prevail here when it comes to build crafting and theory crafting. And it also helps if you have some kind of theme bound to your build as